right into the beginning of my experience to serve on a panel for the Los Angeles Theater organization, LATC, and received questions, got an understanding of what was out there and what was missing. Then I monitored a panel shortly after that out here in LA of artistic directors who were interested and concerned with what intimacy directors were going to do to their process. So that was a very interesting panel to moderate. Some of you may have read the article that I published in February, March with HowlRound that kind of dug deeper into the issues around intimacy direction and the lack of people of color in the leadership. This is not to say that there aren't intimacy directors and intimacy coordinators of color, but to my knowledge, and up until yesterday, I still didn't see leadership that reflected our society, and that's what I'm trying to change. In my journey, I also had the opportunity to have a question and answer period. Some of you may have seen it with Carly Wechstein, and she's absolutely wonderful. Hi, Carly, she's out there. We're out here in LA, and we were invited by Directors Lab West to have a conversation about where we thought intimacy direction was going and our input and insights into that. And I believe that is still up on HowlRound and also through Directors Lab West, so you can check those out. We were really talking about the future of intimacy direction and where that is going. So it's a really fun, interesting, and hopefully informative conversation. And now here I am with TCG. And I'd just like to say that during this course of conversation with you, and then when you're invited as a community to ask questions and pose questions, that there's nothing in my mind or heart that wants to throw shade or say something bad about the people who have created this space. They are excellent at what they do, and they are bringing intimacy direction into the vernacular of our artistic institutions. And so for them, I applaud and thank them. Moving on. Now, what we can do here, can we see that slide, Sarah? Can we see that slide? Is there a way you can share? Is there a way you can share that? There we go. Okay, so intimacy choreography is the craft of delivering moments of staged intimacy or sexual violence with the same respect, specificity, and professionalism that we treat moments of all other movement-based storytelling. Intimacy choreographers endeavor to respect the boundaries, integrity, and needs of the actors involved so that they can do their best work enthusiastically. That's the definition that was created between Carly and myself, and I feel that it holds true and is sound to what anyone in the industry would say today. We're facing a very interesting time in our country. We have been called into action, not only because of the uprising that's happening, and we'll get to that in a moment, but also because this pandemic has asked of our leaders and asked of our artists an incredible amount of resolve and problem solving and protection of people that haven't necessarily been at the top of the chain. So how does intimacy play into COVID on top of an uprising? There's a lot of discussion happening right now. I know that SAG is very involved with creating guidelines for intimacy. I know that equity is very involved. Time's Up is, which I am a part of that discussion. We are looking at women in this space. We are looking at women of color in this space. A month ago, I decided to step out on a branch and start Intimacy Coordinators of Color. Intimacy Coordinators of Color is meant to be a place where people who are interested in intimacy through the landscape and through the vision and view of being a Black, Indigenous, or person of color can get training that is sensitive to what they need and what they feel, or what we feel is a discussion that isn't happening quite yet in other training organizations. Not that it won't, I hope it does. But we stand firm and solid in believing that actors of color are in a situation that is dire to their professional health, to their physical health, and to their mental health at times in the higher institutions of theater and film. I will bring an example to the table. I just read this morning over a cup of coffee about an individual actor who worked for the Mouse and was in a role that was traditionally, I guess, a white role, playing a prince. And systematically, because there wasn't an intimacy director there, not alone an intimacy director who I'm sure would have shut it down, but also an intimacy director of color was not there, because the criticism and the constant note-taking and the 10-minute note sessions outside of rehearsal, sometime involving discussions about his genitalia, were so untoward and so unfair that I feel like if an intimacy director of color had been there to level the dynamic of the director. One director of color directed the show. When the show opened, they brought in another director who was not of color, and that's when the discussions began, directly related to this man and his character, what he had been directed to do. And my heart sank, because how in 2020, or this was 2019, how are we still discussing Black male genitalia and the offense of it in a public format? And it's because it's been allowed to happen. So when I tell you I'm an intimacy coordinator, well, I'm an intimacy consultant. What I would like to do is make that very clear before I move on. I am not an intimacy coordinator. I am an intimacy director, which is what we do on the stage. But since I'm out here in LA, I want to bring more people of color into the film and television world that can be on set where these egregious things happen all of the time. Double on top of that, COVID, which is attacking people of color more than any other group of people in this nation. And just a parenthetical comment, the blue lipstick that you see is in solidarity for all of the essential workers that are still out there working against this pandemic, and then against this uprising that is so very inspiring and hopefully will be helpful to us. But I started this program so that we can get more people of color onto film sets and onto television sets to help assuage this blatant racial discourse, racially uncomfortable discourse, and to protect bodies. I'll give you an example. Out of COVID-19, writers are writing about COVID-19. Now they're also going to start writing about this uprising that is happening. When those plays and television shows and films are called upon to move into production, when we get started again, the African American actors who are going to be called to reenact being slammed against a cop car, being hit by rubber pellets, being subjugated, being sexually assaulted, whatever this comes into as far as creation. I'm not trying to censor the writers. The words need to be written. But there needs to be an across the board concern and care for Black people in particular as these stories unfold. And so I'll give you a scenario. You're on set, you're an African American actor. You have to enact a scene of violence against a white person through COVID-19 or through the uprising. That's the context. If you are feeling trauma come up in your body, if you are feeling a specific pain and mental anguish as an actor, reliving over and over, take after take, this situation, I feel that it is important that there's someone of color there to hold space for you. Now, I could be absolutely wrong, but I think I'm right. And that's why ICOC exists. It's not to overtake, it is to provide and hold a space of someone in the community trying to do their craft and to have that leveler of the power dynamic so that if that actor needs space and time, there will be an understanding of a person in leadership there that can provide that space and time. And then we move on and we shoot the scene enthusiastically. And we shoot the scenes of intimacy enthusiastically. But there has to be care and protection for people of color, specifically from now moving forward. Some of you have asked, and I've been talking to a lot of people about this, and sorry, I'm going to reflect in my notes for a second. But they're asking about institutions of theater. So I'm just going to take a small moment. I've got about six minutes left, and then I'm going to open it up to questions for you. So start asking the questions now, so we can get those going. But institutionally, I've been working with a couple of organizations already, and hopefully more that I can work with, toward this. But I just want to take a moment to talk about theatrical institutions and what they can do, since we are talking about intimacy direction, which is on stage. That is choreographing scenes of sexual violence and trauma, and also scenes of sexual intimacy on stage. Right now, in this pandemic, on top of an uprising, people of color are extremely vulnerable. And often in these institutions, which have done amazing jobs with inclusion and diversity, they have done incredible jobs. But now is the time where we're going to see the action. I know a lot of theaters have spoken out about what Black Lives Matter and about what they're going to do in this time of pandemic. But here's the thing, institutionally, the last people hired are often the first people fired. So I ask institutions to be cognizant of the fact that if you've just hired a whole slew of BIPOC into your organization, that you please don't now just fire them because they're the last people hired. Also, when we move back into these spaces and we're dealing with social distancing, how are you going to arrange your office spaces that reflect, okay, we can't just have the white leaders in their offices away from everyone else and then have the newly hired BIPOC sitting in cubicles all together. It's just not cute. Like, it's not a cute look. So I'm asking institution leaders to think about that as well. Women and Black, Indigenous people of color are more vulnerable to COVID and are more vulnerable to the infection spreading or the virus spreading. So I would hope that institutions would, once we open back up again, use the protocols that are set in place by people far more experienced and knowledgeable than I. Hopefully there will be some sort of temperature taking, masks, PPE, in the rehearsal space. As well as we move into rehearsal space, I'm hoping that not only will the actors be protected, but also the stagehands. We love stagehands. We love the locals. The stagehands, that they be protected, that the stage managers also be trained and protected as well. There's no one that works harder than a stage manager. I'd just like to give a shout out to all of you, because the responsibility of keeping not only COVID-19 protocols in check, but also making sure that people aren't being marginalized by race and how they step into the room. So I thank the stage managers in advance, and I would hope that there would be training for stage managers in order to absorb this information, to hold this information, and then to judiciously, within their job with requirements, create an energy in the cast after the director is gone that is safe and inclusive for the BIPOC in the cast. And here's the thing, this isn't only actually about BIPOC. This is also about the white folks in the room. You're suffering too. I'm just going to hold space for the white folks. You're suffering too. And unless we can get the dialogue going about how we feel, what we're doing in the creative spaces, and how we're going to move together as a tribe to alleviate the fear, alleviate the racism, alleviate the imbalance in power and leadership across the board, then why are we doing what we're doing? This is the question that I have for you. Okay, well, as I've promised, here we are. I do have some action steps, so I'm going to take a little moment. These are suggestions of how to incorporate and hold space for intimacy in our world and in our artistic institutions. So I'm just going to take just a minute to say these things out loud, and then I will open it up to questions for you. First of all, we need to train current intimacy directors in race-related bias and language. I think there needs to be a certain attention to decolonizing the language that we use in intimacy direction. We also need to think about intersectionality in that discussion of vocabulary that we use when we're on set and when we're in the rehearsal room. Every new trainee in this field should have racial bias training. I think we need, yes, I'll send you I'll type up the list. I see that, Sean. I'll type it up. We should have this training as a part of the vernacular of who we are when we step into a rehearsal room or on set, bottom line. The health experts dealing with COVID-19 have been speaking to leadership in these organizations about their concerns. But we need to also make sure that people of color are being included in those conversations. We can't have the word come down like Moses from on high. We need to be in the room. Because there might be something that is so ingrained in white culture that may miss a mark that is so obvious to someone that looks like me. And we're just here to help. We're here to help in that dialogue. We're here to help to explain that. So hire us and put us in your boardrooms. There needs to be, and this is something wild, and this is the last thing, but just like there's a sexual harassment phone number, there might need to be a number for people who feel as though, you know, people of color who feel that there's an issue, like this gentleman who worked for the Mouse. The only people he had to go to was HR in that company. Well, if the cultural climate of the company isn't open and accepting to change, then you see that he's alone. He's like Sisyphus, rolling a rock up a very hard hill, only to have it crash down to the bottom again. So his only recourse was to quit the show or take it. And these aren't two options that are financially sound for actors of color, and they're not fair for the audiences that see these productions. A little black child in the audience, a black boy in an audience that sees a black man playing a prince. We don't know the magic that happens when that is seen by that little boy. Let's not deny future generations these beautiful moments that we can create for them. Let's uplift everyone. Let's give everyone an equal chance to pursue their dreams. Okay, questions. Time for questions. Who has a question? Thank you so much for listening to me. I realize that was a lot to listen to. I don't know how to do this, so okay. I'm just waiting on questions.
Okay, hi Anne, this is Sarah. I'm going to voice some from the Q&A box that I'm getting.
Okay.
The first question is, how do we connect with POC intimacy directors in our city? Do you have a resource to connect these professionals to theaters who want to hire them?
Yes, here's the situation with that. I believe there are less than 10 working people of color in the intimacy field. I believe that most of them are working through an organization called IDC. I am about to start a training program that focuses on intimacy coordinators out here in LA, and then maybe branching out into the country to create the people so that institutions can then hire the people. Right now, we don't have enough. You can go to my website, Intimacy Directors of Color or Intimacy Coordinators of Color. They'll take you to the same site, and send me questions. You're more than welcome to send me questions about that, and I will try to get you to the right place. Okay, next question.
Great. Can you speak to training or work that has been done?
I see. Sasha Smith, Tanise Johnson. Oh, it went off. The names.
I can see them. I can read this.
Great.
Thank you to Sarah in the chat. Sasha Smith, Tanise Johnson, Nicole Calendar, and Rocio Mendez.
Rocio, I hope you're watching. Hi, Rocio. And Kaja Dunn, yes, Kaja Dunn is a dear, dear person. Kaja's been working in this field. I believe she's in North Carolina, but she's more than welcome to. You're more well. I don't know. I'm not saying give her emails, but if you need to be connected to Kaja, contact me, and I will do that. I don't want to put her on blast like that. And there are more to come. Okay, more to come. This is what I'm seeing in the field. Okay, next question.
Okay. Can you speak to training or work that has been done with our youth, theater for young audiences, and or education? As a Mexican-American woman and a director of education, I am interested, and it is my responsibility to gain training and provide the support for our directors and teaching artists, for our students, and especially students of color. What advice would you give, and how can I use my role and voice to bring it back to a national platform within the education and theater for young audience community? I'm ready to jump into this work.
That is great. Okay, so first of all, I recommend, and I'm going to just turn my back for a second, this book. If you are an educator, in the college system, in the high school system, and you feel like you are treading water out there alone, you have this play that you want to direct, and it's got a scene of intimacy in it, and your faculty head isn't really on board and doesn't really know what intimacy direction is, you can take a look at this book, and I'm going to cover my face. It's called Staging Sex. It's probably backward on your screen, but Staging Sex. It is practical tools for an instructor or a director who doesn't have the access to a budget or the time or the community agreement of their head of school to have an intimacy director come in. These are practical tools and vocabulary to desexualize language when you're in rehearsal with young people. So I highly recommend it. And then, as far as opening the dialogue, I am working with two intimacy educators right now on first of all, we're going to take a national survey of intimacy, of university professors, and then also actors and artists in the field. We're taking two separate surveys. What do you need as far as intimacy? How are you introduced to intimacy? How do you identify? Because this isn't just a BIPOC situation. It is lifting out into intersectionality, people with disabilities or identify as disabled. All of this is coming into the mix now. And while it may seem overwhelming, I think if we can come together as intimacy workers, consultants, coordinators, directors, all the names we are, if we can get together on this, it's going to make everything, better for the people who engage in theater and in acting. So yeah, I think I answered that question. Thank you so much for that that question.
Okay. Would you speak to the anxiety about touch, any kind of touch, that will come up in the first wave of rehearsals and productions when we can be together in the room again with pandemic on top with pandemic? I'm gonna end there.
This is an amazing question, and I'm so absolutely excited about this. I just held up a book. I just held up a book that has the vocabulary for engaging in intimacy in a desexualized way. But that's assuming that people are actually going to want to touch one another. I got a little bit of flack when I said this before, but I'm going to say it again because I believe it. When we get back into rehearsal rooms and on film sets, simple choreography like a handshake or someone resting their head on someone else's shoulder or walking arm in arm or hand in hand down a street? Are we as intimacy directors and coordinators going to need to navigate that for the actors? I know here in Hollywood, the way this system works, which I am discovering on a day-to-day basis, is that actors, I'm not going to talk about celebrity too much, but I have been talking to some friends of mine who are celebrities, and they're very concerned about just simple touch. So I don't have an answer for you other than maybe on stage we can pull out of the graphic and move into the, not suggestive, but move into a more stylized intimacy choreography. So that if it's a kiss that, maybe their hands get very close but don't touch. It's a very interesting world that we're about to enter, and directors are going to have so much more possibility and capability than choreographing skin-to-skin sexual violence and skin-to-skin scenes of sexual intimacy. So I say the doors are open for creative minds. I like to believe that we are creative enough as art makers to determine in those rehearsal rooms how we can keep people protected, how we can keep people mentally safe and guarded and protected, and then still create the most badass art that we can in this time. We are moving forward, and I think that this shouldn't stymie us. It should challenge us to make art that is reflective of the time. So that's my answer. Yeah, someone is saying we do this all the time in scenes of violence. The Matrix, perfect example. They never really even touched one another, and it can be so powerful. So that's kind of the creativity. I don't want this to stymie us and to scare us. Artists are the forefront of humanity. Forefront. We have to lead the charge. And if we're not scared, and if we can find ways enthusiastically to create scenes of intimacy without touch, then we will be doing society a service. Okay, that was a long answer. Next question.
As a costume designer, I work closely with actors and want to learn more about how I can assist the work of intimacy director coordinators and actors to help work happen professionally, safely, and successfully. How can costume designers become involved in the conversation and be of use in both the fields of intimacy direction and uplifting voices of BIPOC?
This is such a beautiful question. And designers, costume makers, stitchers, everybody who, I started this journey of mine professionally as a full stipend seamstress. I just want you to know. So I have a very big place in my heart for costumers. Okay, so this is what I think about this, and this is just me coming from my lens. But I think costuming is going to have to reflect social distancing. And what I mean by that is, let's bring the pagne back. I mean, if you don't know what a pagne is, it's, from I believe the 16th century, and there were these wide side panels for women's dresses, which is why the doorways were so big, so that women could go through these dresses. How can we find 6 feet of costuming between people in some cases? How can we find a creative way to use the PPE masks in shows? How can we find a way to bring the glove back in costuming? How can we find a way to bring more protection for costume dressers. The dressers are the backbone of every show. I can't tell you how many. Okay, number one, I was in chorus line in school, and that was a 15-second costume change from leotard to leotard. If you have never been in chorus line, you don't know what I'm talking about, but it was a quick change. And I depended on 2 dressers to help me. How are we going to keep the dressers protected backstage in the dark, on their knees, putting shoes on? These are questions I think that the unions need to take care of, and that should be asked very openly and creatively. We can do it, but let's not throw our stagehands under the bus as we do this. Thank you for your question.
Can you break down the differences between intimacy coordinator, intimacy director, intimacy consultant, and intimacy choreographer?
No. Short answer. Here's the thing with titles. This is such a new field. I guess, Laura Ricard, who was the co-writer of Chelsea Pace's book, Staging Sex. Let me see if I can. Okay, I know there are people out there that can correct me if I'm wrong. Intimacy choreography is a blanket term. It blankets the term. Intimacy coordination happens out, in LA, in the theater, in the film and television world, because an intimacy coordinator has a whole series of jobs before they get onto the set. And they have to deal with communication between the actor and the intimacy coordinator. They have to deal with making sure that the writer that gives permission from the actor to the production team of what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do when it comes to nudity and sexual situations within the script. So they are back and forth with the actor, back and forth with the production team. They're working with the AD on set. They are trying to choreograph something that the director can get behind, that also has consent and and doesn't take advantage of the boundaries of the actor. So it's a little bit more involved when we're talking about what's happening over here. I keep saying LA because it's Hollywood, but what is happening in the film and television world. Intimacy direction. I've been an intimacy director for 30 years. It is directly related to stage work. It is directly related to creating a safe space for actors to express themselves and to do the work of the script. It is created to level a power dynamic in the room, so that if a director wants an actor to do something that is seeming not a thing that, a kiss, that can be arranged, but if the director is pushing in a direction that is untoward and crashes through the boundaries of an actor, an intimacy director is there to field that and help negotiate that. But the main job of an intimacy director is to create choreography for the scenes of intimacy and sexual violence. So just like a choreographer would come in, or a fight choreographer would come in, that's what an intimacy director does on stage. Hopefully that has explained it to my knowledge. Next question.
I recognize this is a hard question, but I'd love your thoughts. What tips do you have for BIPOC intimacy directors in predominantly white rooms to assert their power? i.e., what do you do when the director, the assistant director, the artistic director, etc. are all white, and you, as the BIPOC intimacy coordinator, try to make space for the BIPOC actors, crew, designers, etc.?
Mr. Rogers said something, and I'm going to misquote it, absolutely. If someone has that quote on the tip of their tongue, find find the person doing the good things in the room. Find an ally in that room. Just because you look like the only person, yeah, look for the helpers. That's it. Find the helpers. Look for the helpers in that room. Because although there might be a certain wall of silence that you are looking at, there's going to be a helper in that room. Even if it's the the assistant director, the stage manager, have that conversation pre-table work with the director that hires you. Find that person before you get to the rehearsal room. Now, if there's something untoward happening, the first thing you have to do is protect that actor. At least try to protect that actor. And that is not an easy thing to step forward and do, and it could be very, very scary. But we have to be on the right side of history. And if you can protect an actor, do it. These are troubling times. These are times that we're going to see aggression manifest itself in very insidious ways, because not all of us believe Black Lives Matter. But we just have to land on the right side of history on that. Do your best. Tell your truth. Protect the actor. Next question.
If you cannot hire a POC intimacy director, how do we still have these moments? Is that the line to just do another show?
Can you ask the question again?
If you cannot hire a POC intimacy director, how do we still have those moments? Is that the line to just do another show?
I have to question institutions that pick shows that involve Black people that don't have a structure around those people to protect them. Are you tokenizing people? Are you saying, oh, look at our multi-million-dollar institution, we did a Black show, and then kick those people to the dirt and don't protect them? This is the question that I have. I don't want to stop doing Black show theater. I don't even know what you want to call it. Shows of color. I don't want these stories to be buried. But what I don't want to continue to happen is situations where when a Black director is hired to direct Black people and there's a scene of intimacy. How can I say this? We just need more POC in intimacy, bottom line. Because I don't want to shutter the voices of writers of color. I don't want to shutter the voices of institutions that will actually support the work of these writers. But I'm just wanting to communicate that people of color in intimacy is where we need to move forward, and with a quickness. Because like I said, these stories, sorry, I got really close to the screen, that's aggressive. These stories are being written right now. So hopefully, with the organizations that exist now, and hopefully more organizations will come. My organization, people are like, right now. I know. So it's going to take, I think, a sit down with the leaders of the companies that do exist to have this conversation. I mean, I can see in 2 years or down the line that we have intimacy coordination direction conferences, that we have conferences maybe supported by TCG, where intimacy workers can come together and create guidelines that feed us and nourish us all, so that we can then disperse. Yes, I see all these comments and conversations coming in. Please, please, if you're a leader out there in intimacy, please feel free to contact me through intimacycoordinatorsofcolor.com, and we can make this happen. There's no reason why it's not happening except that it's just not happening yet. And I hope it does happen. And I hope that I have given enough props to the leaders that are in the field now, so that finally we can come together and figure this out together, so that we are keeping everybody safer, not only during COVID, but also after this uprising. Hopefully I answered that. Oh, the website is intimacycoordinatorsofcolor.com or intimacydirectorsofcolor.com. The website is not complete, but it's there, and it should give you some information about who we're working with, what we're trying to do. Thanks for asking again. Okay, next question. We've got like 10 minutes left.
Have you considered how we can also train our actors and directors?
Ask it again.
Have you considered how we can also train our actors and directors? I think.
You know, I was just speaking to a very prominent director here stage director here in Los Angeles last night over cocktails on my porch with masks. It was amazing. And he was really grilling me about what actors and directors can do now when we come back into this. I think it wouldn't hurt if, and you know, this is a financial thing as well, but there are classes that anyone can take dealing with racial bias, white privilege, fragility. Educate yourself about the playing field that you're in. I think a lot of people are so much and so hard on the grind. I know directors who are working, were working before COVID, show to show to show to show, and bless that abundance. But now that we're in this time of pause, where Mother Nature has put us on timeout, it might be a great thing to research where you are lacking information and knowledge as a director and as an actor. There's a class in mental health and first aid that I think directors wouldn't be it wouldn't be bad for you to take. It just shows you ways to help an actor out of a situation if they're disassociating or having feelings come up in their body. There's a great book, The Body Keeps the Score. Somebody tell me the title. The Body Keeps the Score. Who is it by? Somebody tell me that. That'll be in the chat. That is kind of like the main tome of mental health based on trauma. And I think it's a good place to start. Yes. Basil van der Kolk, Body Keeps the Score. Yeah, I got it right. Okay, so that's in the chat if you guys want to look at that as a resource. Number 2, don't be hard on yourself. We are all standing in space and watching this unfold and being actively influenced and impacted by everything that is happening around us. You don't have to reinvent the wheel today. I'm telling this to myself too. You know, I've been pushing for the last 8 months to create something, to create a bloom in the desert here and just create a voice. So take care of yourself, take care of your family, but also this is a perfect time for education. Okay, I've been given a 5-minute warning. One more. Oh, okay. Can I do one more and then I'll do my closing thoughts, or no time?
Up to you.
I'll do one more.
All right. I'm sort of mishmashing a couple questions here.
Shannon, yes, you can email me.
This is really a question about what is the best way to support stage managers, tech folks who weren't in the room when the intimacy direction was happening in the performance space. And how can those folks be supported if they're seeing these things night after night and standing by night after night?
This is a great question. And I think that the leaders that are working now in the fields, maybe we can find strategies for stage managers. Like I said, the backbone of a show, stage manager. And we need to create ways to help them see things and create avenues for them to respond, almost like an emergency responder to the things that they see happening, because they can't call the director. The director's gone. Director's on another production. So how can we create a way for them to be and remain the doula of this production, to care for it, to nurture the production, to nurture the people in the production, and to keep it sound and in the integrity of what the director realized? I don't have those answers, but I think it's a great question. And I think that, you know, those of us that are in the, you know, in the field of intimacy might be charged to, yes, we should have stage managers attend training. We should. As to actually, my organization is working with some stage managers now and creating a class. So we might be teaching that class through my company. So really early days. But yes, thank you for that. That would be a great resource in class for stage managers to take. And I'm working on creating that, and hopefully I will have some input and help about that. Okay, so I'm going to give my closing statement. Is that what I'm supposed to do? Thank you all so much. And as we breathe together and live through this pandemic on top of, with an uprising slammed on top of it, I need you to know that you are thought of. You are the storyteller, the story creator, the historian. Let's sit around the campfire together and create strategies to fix what is so very, very broken, not only for the people of color who are having huge demands put on them health-wise and artistically, but also to the white people in the room who are allies and who care about us and who are holding us in their own specific way. I say thank you to all of you. Thank you to TCG for having me come and hold this space for everyone. And Sarah, specifically for your technical abilities. I really appreciate you, and the whole TCG team and this conference. Thank you for not canceling, but for creating a space and opportunity for us to continue these very important conversations. Thank you.